The massive viewscreen aboard the Imperial command ship, Eternal Dominion, flickered with static before displaying Earth's United Defense Council chamber. Admiral Vector, a towering figure with metallic purple skin and ceremonial armor, sneered at the assembled human representatives. His species had conquered 12 galaxies through superior technology and unstoppable elite warriors. These primitive humans would be no different. "Your species has 24 hours to surrender," Vector announced, his translator converting his resonant voice into Earth standard. "We have deployed our most elite warrior squadron, the Star Reapers, to your solar system. They have never failed to subjugate a civilization." The council members exchanged glances, but instead of fear, slight smiles played across their faces. The head counselor, an older man named Jack, leaned forward. "We understand your terms, Admiral. Earth will send our representative to meet your warriors." Vector's facial ridges twitched in confusion when only a single transport signature appeared on their scanners 6 hours later. The ship was small, barely armed, and contained just one human life sign. Surely this was a mistake or a suicide mission? The communication channel crackled open. "This is Pete Thompson, Earth's representative. I'm an engineer. Brought my lucky wrench and some coffee. Ready to meet your warriors whenever you folks are." Vector's bridge crew stared in disbelief. Had humanity lost its mind? The Star Reapers were the most feared combat unit in 12 galaxies, masters of advanced weaponry and tactical systems. And Earth had sent a maintenance worker? Pete's transport docked with casual precision at the designated coordinates. Through the viewscreen, Vector watched the airlock cycle. A surprisingly ordinary-looking human male stepped out, wearing a simple gray jumpsuit with numerous pockets. He carried an old-fashioned metal toolbox in one hand and what appeared to be a thermal beverage container in the other. "Nice setup you got here," Pete commented, looking around the docking bay with professional interest. "Though I'm noticing some inefficiencies in your atmospheric cycling system. Might want to get that checked out." The Star Reapers, resplendent in their phase-shift armor and wielding quantum disruption rifles, formed a threatening half-circle around the lone engineer. Their leader, Commander Apex, stepped forward with weapon raised. "You mock us by sending a single maintenance drone?" Pete took a slow sip from his beverage container. "Not mocking anyone. Just figured if you're bringing your best warriors, we should bring our best problem solver." He patted the wrench hanging from his belt. "Sometimes the simplest tools are all you need to change the course of history." Vector watched the scene with growing unease. Something about the human's casual confidence made his combat instincts scream warnings. But it was too late to reconsider, the challenge had been issued and accepted. In 24 hours, either Earth would fall or... The Admiral pushed away the impossible alternative. After all, what could one human with a wrench possibly do against the most elite fighting force in known space? Pete's slight smile suggested they were about to find out. The Star Reapers' combat training hadn't prepared them for Pete Thompson. While they expected resistance, defiance, or even fear, they received something far more unsettling, helpful suggestions about their equipment maintenance. "You hear that slight whine in your quantum rifle's power core?" Pete asked Commander Apex, who had been threatening him with said weapon for the past hour. "That's a sign your containment field is about 2% out of alignment. Mind if I take a look?" Silence. Apex barked, but Pete noticed his grip on the rifle shifting slightly. The whine was getting louder. Admiral Vector had ordered the human engineer to be confined to a high-security holding cell while they prepared for Earth's inevitable surrender. Pete spent the entire walk to his cell pointing out various inefficiencies in the ship's design, from suboptimal power routing to poorly optimized life support systems. "Just saying," Pete commented as force fields hummed to life around him, "you're wasting about 30% of your energy output with that resonance pattern. I could help you fix that." The guard commander, Lieutenant Razor, found himself unconsciously taking notes. He'd always wondered why the containment fields seemed to drain more power than they should. Pete sat on the cell's metallic bench and pulled out his datapad, which the Empire's scanners had dismissed as too primitive to be a threat. He began sketching diagrams while occasionally glancing at the cell's structural layout. The guards watched him with a mixture of confusion and growing unease. "Request permission to speak with the prisoner," one of the younger Star Reapers, Junior Warrior Bolt, asked his superiors. The guards had been debating among themselves about Pete's casual observation regarding their ship's waste recycling system. "Permission denied," Commander Apex growled. "The human is attempting psychological warfare. Do not engage." Pete looked up from his datapad. "Did you know your artificial gravity plating is running on an obsolete modulation frequency? That's why you all have that slight sway in your walk. Must be murder on your targeting systems." Several warriors immediately stood straighter, suddenly aware of their subtle compensatory movements. Commander Apex's facial ridges darkened with anger. "Admiral," he communicated privately to Vector, "the human's observations are disturbing. Our technicians are reporting his casual assessments of our systems match their diagnostic data. He identified design flaws in our equipment that we've documented but never solved." In his command center, Vector frowned at the security feeds. The human hadn't done anything overtly threatening. He just sat there, occasionally making notes and commenting on various systems with an engineer's practiced eye. Yet somehow, his very presence was causing ripples of uncertainty through the Empire's most hardened warriors. "Sir," a bridge technician interrupted Vector's thoughts, "we're detecting slight fluctuations in the ship's power grid. Nothing serious, but..." "But what?" They match exactly with the inefficiencies the human mentioned during his walk to the cell." Vector's eyes narrowed. "Increase security. Monitor everything he does. He's planning something." Back in his cell, Pete finished his coffee and pulled out his wrench, using it to tap thoughtfully against his boot. The metallic rhythm seemed to harmonize perfectly with the slight vibration in the ship's deck plating, a vibration caused by an imperfect alignment in the main power conduits running beneath the brig. "You know," he said to no one in particular, "in engineering school, they taught us that every complex system has a critical point. Find it, and even the biggest problems become surprisingly simple to solve." He smiled at his wrench. "The trick is knowing where to look." The guards shifted uncomfortably as the deck vibration grew just a tiny bit stronger, though none of them could explain why the sound of the human's tapping wrench made their combat instincts twitch with warning. The first sign that something was wrong came during the midnight shift change. A simple maintenance access panel, located 3 corridors away from Pete's cell, popped open with a soft hiss. No alarms triggered, after all, it was just a standard equipment housing. "Alert!" Lieutenant Razor's voice crackled over the comms. "The human has escaped." Admiral Vector burst onto the bridge, his ceremonial armor hastily fastened. "How?" "The cell's force fields never deactivated." Security footage showed Pete's cell still humming with energy, but the bench he'd been sitting on had a Pete-sized hole cleanly cut through it and the deck plating below. The hole led straight into the ship's maintenance tunnels. "Those passages are too small for anyone to navigate," Commander Apex insisted, studying the schematics. "They're automated repair channels for maintenance drones." A distant clang echoed through the ship's corridors, followed by the distinctive sound of a wrench tapping against metal. "Found the problem," Pete's voice emerged from nearby speakers, having somehow accessed the ship's comm system. "Your automated repair systems are way too rigid. No flexibility, no creativity. Mind if I make a few adjustments?" Throughout the massive vessel, maintenance drones began emerging from their charging stations. Instead of their usual programmed patterns, they moved with purpose, almost like they were following a new set of instructions. "Shut down all automated systems," Vector commanded. "Can't do that, sir," a technician replied, fingers dancing across his console. The override codes aren't working. He's rewritten their base protocols using their own maintenance routines. The Star Reapers deployed in hunting formation, their quantum rifles charged. But the ship's layout had suddenly become treacherous. Doors that should have opened snapped shut. Corridors that led to the maintenance sections rerouted through endless loops. Did you know, Pete's voice echoed through the ship, that your life support system uses the same basic protocols as your weapons? Fascinating design choice. Very efficient. Also very risky. Commander Apex's quantum rifle suddenly powered down, along with every other energy weapon on the ship. The safety protocols had been activated by the life support system itself. Don't worry, Pete continued cheerfully, I'm not going to turn off your air or artificial gravity. That wouldn't be safe. But maybe we should talk about those terms again? I've got some suggestions for improving your efficiency ratings. Vector slammed his fist against his command chair. Deploy the combat drones. About that, Pete's voice carried a hint of amusement. Remember those maintenance drones I mentioned? Turns out they share a lot of parts with your combat models. Same manufacturers, I'm guessing. They've been having a nice chat about workplace optimization. Through the ship's viewports, the crew watched in horror as their sleek combat drones emerged from their bays, each one now sporting makeshift modifications built from maintenance parts. They moved in formation, but not one responding to Imperial commands. To be honest, Pete said, the sound of his wrench tapping against metal punctuating his words, I'm a bit disappointed. Your combat systems are impressive, but they're all designed to fight enemies. Nobody ever thought about defending against someone who just wants to help improve things. A maintenance drone rolled up to Commander Apex, offering him a detailed report on his quantum rifle's power efficiency ratings, complete with suggested upgrades. So, Pete's voice took on a more business-like tone, should we discuss those surrender terms? I've drafted up some maintenance schedules that could really help with your long-term operational costs. Vector stared at his elite warriors, the deadliest fighting force in 12 galaxies, now surrounded by helpful maintenance drones offering equipment optimization tips and safety procedure updates. Somewhere in the maze of maintenance tunnels, Pete Thompson took another sip of coffee and patted his wrench. Sometimes the best way to defeat an enemy was to fix them until they weren't enemies anymore. Admiral Vector's humiliation spread across Imperial communications like a virus. In response, the Empire deployed their second fleet, led by the dreaded Grand Marshal Thunder. 6 massive warships dropped out of hyperspace, surrounding the Eternal Dominion. This has gone far enough, Thunder's voice boomed through all channels. One human maintenance worker cannot be allowed to make a mockery of the Empire's finest. Oh, hey there. Pete's voice cheerfully interrupted the transmission. I was hoping for some backup. Your first ship's maintenance systems were getting a bit lonely. Thunder's face darkened. We are not here to, did you folks know your ships all run on the same basic operating system? Pete continued. Talk about a security risk. But don't worry, I've got some great ideas for improvements. The Grand Marshal watched in horror as status lights across his bridge began changing color. What's happening? Just sharing some optimization protocols I developed for the Dominion, Pete explained. Your maintenance networks were pretty eager to try them out. They've been stuck running the same outdated routines for decades, poor things. Across all 7 ships, systems began optimizing themselves with frightening efficiency. Weapons powered down for scheduled maintenance. Shield generators initiated routine diagnostics. Engines started running performance evaluations. You see, Pete's voice echoed through every ship's comm system, the real problem with your military technology is that it's too focused on destruction. But if you just look at it from a maintenance perspective, everything becomes a lot simpler. Commander Apex, still aboard the Dominion, watched as his elite warriors struggled with their now extremely safety-conscious equipment. Their legendary phase shift armor refused to activate without completing a full diagnostic sequence. Their quantum rifles insisted on running efficiency calculations before each shot. "The human is spreading," a technician reported to Thunder. "Our maintenance systems are sharing his protocols with other Imperial ships in range. Shut down all communication systems," Thunder commanded. "Can't, sir," another officer replied. "The maintenance networks are classifying our override commands as potentially harmful to optimal system performance." Through every viewport, Imperial crews watched in dismay as their combat drones formed orderly queues for efficiency inspections. Maintenance bots emerged from service tunnels across all 7 ships, proudly displaying their newly optimized routines. "I've been thinking," Pete said, the sound of his wrench tapping thoughtfully against metal echoing through every corridor. "Your whole empire runs on these systems, doesn't it? All connected through the same maintenance networks, all using the same basic protocols." Thunder's face went pale. "You wouldn't dare." "Oh, I'm not doing anything dangerous," Pete assured him. "Just sharing some helpful suggestions for improvement. Did you know your entire fleet's power grid could be at least 43% more efficient with a few simple adjustments?" Status reports began flooding in from across Imperial space. Maintenance systems everywhere were updating their protocols. Combat units were being optimized for safety. Weapon platforms were initiating comprehensive efficiency reviews. "Your choice," Pete offered, his voice now reaching not just the 7 ships, but spreading through Imperial communication channels. "We can do this the hard way, with me fixing everything whether you like it or not. Or we can do this the easy way, where you folks actually listen to my suggestions for improvement. I've got this great presentation about preventive maintenance schedules." Grand Marshal Thunder looked at his elite fleet, the most powerful warships in known space, now completely preoccupied with running system diagnostics and efficiency calculations. A maintenance drone helpfully offered him a detailed report on his command chair's ergonomic settings. In the distance, they could still hear the rhythmic tapping of Pete's wrench, keeping time with the newly optimized hum of their ship's engines. The Imperial High Command gathered for an emergency session, their holographic forms flickering with barely contained panic. Reports from across 12 galaxies told the same story: their mighty empire was being improved into submission. "The situation is unprecedented," High Commander Steele reported, his image stuttering as his ship's communications underwent another routine optimization. "The humans' maintenance protocols are spreading faster than we can contain them. Our most secure military installations," another commander added, "are being helpful. The automated defense platforms around our homeworld are offering efficiency tips to approaching vessels." A junior officer burst into the conference room aboard Thunder's flagship. "Sir, we've lost the Imperial Academy." "Destroyed?" Thunder demanded. "Worse, sir. It's been upgraded. The combat training programs have been integrated with maintenance protocols. Our elite warriors are being taught proper equipment care and workplace safety procedures alongside battle tactics." Through every screen and hologram, they could see the Empire's military might transforming. Battleships were reorganizing their hangars for better inventory management. Combat drones were forming efficiency committees. The most devastating weapons in known space were quietly powering down for long overdue maintenance checks. "I've been going through your records," Pete's voice emerged from every communication device, accompanied by the now familiar sound of his wrench tapping against metal. "You folks have been running this empire like you run your ships, all focused on power and intimidation, no thought for long-term maintenance." The Imperial leaders watched helplessly as their classified files were reorganized into neat, properly indexed databases. Their secret weapons archives were being annotated with safety warnings and maintenance schedules. "Did you know," Pete continued conversationally, "that most of your conquered territories are operating at barely 40% efficiency? No preventive maintenance, no optimization protocols, not even basic safety standards. That's just irresponsible. Across the empire, subjugated worlds began receiving comprehensive infrastructure improvement plans. Oppressive monitoring systems transformed into public works maintenance networks. Orbital weapon platforms repurposed themselves into repair and optimization stations. The human must be stopped. High Commander Steele slammed his fist down, only to have a helpful maintenance drone offer him an ergonomic stress relief device. About that, Pete's voice carried a hint of amusement. I've been looking at your command structure. Very top-down, very inefficient. Have you considered implementing a more collaborative workflow? I've drafted some suggestions. The Imperial High Command watched in horror as their organizational charts began rearranging themselves. Arbitrary rank distinctions were being replaced with skill-based qualification assessments. Combat effectiveness ratings were being merged with technical proficiency scores. Your empire's got good bones, Pete explained, but the maintenance culture needs serious work. You can't just conquer and expand without thinking about sustainability. Here, I've prepared a presentation about long-term infrastructure management. Every screen in Imperial space switched to display Pete's surprisingly well-designed slides about preventive maintenance and system optimization. The Empire's most hardened warriors found themselves taking notes. This is the end of everything we've built, Thunder groaned, head in his hands. Nah, Pete replied cheerfully. It's just an upgrade. Your empire will run much better once everything's properly maintained. Though I do have some concerns about your coffee supplies, how do you folks even function without decent break room facilities? The sound of his wrench tapping against metal had become the heartbeat of the Empire's transformation. In its rhythm, the most powerful military force in 12 galaxies was being rebuilt, one optimization at a time. And somewhere in the maintenance tunnels that now network the entire Empire, Pete Thompson smiled and began drafting plans for the galaxy's most efficient coffee distribution system. The Imperial Palace on the throne world buzzed with unprecedented activity. Not from warriors or politicians, but from swarms of maintenance drones enthusiastically implementing Pete's optimization protocols. The Emperor himself, Supreme Overlord Maximus, watched in mounting horror as his opulent throne room was reorganized for maximum efficiency. Your ceremonial armor, Supreme One, a maintenance drone chirped, violates 16 different safety regulations. Might I suggest these ergonomically designed alternatives? Maximus sputtered in rage. I am the supreme ruler of 12 galaxies. I will not be lectured about safety protocols by a maintenance unit. Actually, Pete's voice emerged from the drone speakers, you're currently the supervisor of the galaxy's largest optimization project. Congratulations on the promotion, by the way. I've already updated your job description. Through the palace windows, Maximus could see his capital city transforming. Military parade grounds were being converted into technical training facilities. Weapon factories were retooling to produce maintenance equipment. The infamous Imperial War Academy had been renamed the Imperial Institute of Engineering and Workplace Safety. Your empire's fascinating, Pete continued, the sound of his wrench punctuating his words. You've got all these amazing systems, but nobody ever thought about proper maintenance schedules. Did you know your throne room alone wastes enough energy to power a small planet? Here, I've prepared a cost-benefit analysis. Holographic displays throughout the palace began showing detailed spreadsheets and efficiency reports. The Emperor's most trusted advisors found themselves nodding along with Pete's surprisingly compelling presentation about sustainable infrastructure management. This is rebellion, Maximus declared. Where are my elite warriors? Oh, they're attending a mandatory workshop on preventive maintenance and team building, Pete replied cheerfully. Commander Apex is giving a really interesting presentation about the relationship between proper equipment care and combat effectiveness. Did you know that 60% of your military casualties were caused by poorly maintained equipment? That's just unacceptable from a workplace safety perspective. The Emperor's personal guard, the legendary Shadow Blades, stood uncomfortably in their newly issued high-visibility safety vests. Their ancient and deadly weapons had been temporarily decommissioned pending a complete safety review. Your entire empire runs on fear and intimidation, Pete explained, his voice now coming from every speaker in the palace. But fear isn't sustainable. You know what is? Properly maintained infrastructure. Happy, safe workers. Efficient systems. And really good coffee, speaking of which, your palace break room facilities are seriously lacking. Maximus slumped in his ergonomically adjusted throne. What do you want, human? Want? I'm just helping, Pete replied. But since you asked, I've drafted some suggestions for reorganizing your empire's entire administrative structure. Less focus on conquest, more on infrastructure development. Less warrior training, more technical education. Oh, and mandatory coffee breaks, you wouldn't believe how much that improves workplace morale. Through every window and view screen, the Emperor watched his mighty empire transforming. Military outposts were becoming maintenance hubs. Warrior training camps were converting into technical schools. Even the fearsome imperial anthem had been optimized into a cheerful workplace safety jingle. This is the end of everything, Maximus whispered. Nah, Pete's voice was kind. It's just an upgrade. Your empire wasn't working right because nobody ever did proper maintenance. You can't run a civilization like a battlefield, things break down, people get hurt, efficiency drops. But don't worry, I've got a 12-point plan to fix everything. The rhythmic tapping of Pete's wrench echoed through the palace halls, now keeping time with the hum of optimized systems and the whir of happy maintenance drones. The most feared empire in known space was being maintained into submission, one improvement at a time. And in the newly renovated palace maintenance tunnels, Pete Thompson reviewed his next set of upgrade proposals, sipped his perfectly brewed coffee, and smiled. Sometimes the best way to change an empire wasn't through force, it was through properly scheduled maintenance. 1 month after Pete Thompson first stepped aboard the Eternal Dominion with his wrench and coffee, the Galactic Council convened for an unprecedented session. Representatives from all 12 galaxies gathered to witness something never before seen in the history of space, the formal reorganization of the Imperial Empire into the Intergalactic Maintenance Cooperative. Emperor Maximus, now Chief Maintenance Coordinator Maximus, stood at the podium, wearing his new safety-compliant administrative uniform. Under the guidance of our unexpected advisor, he glanced at Pete, who was casually tightening a loose bolt on the podium's anti-gravity stabilizer. We have discovered a new way forward. The assembled delegates, a mix of former Imperial warriors and newly promoted maintenance supervisors, nodded in agreement. Many were taking notes on their newly optimized data pads. The humans' optimization protocols have spread to every corner of our space, Maximus continued. Our military outposts have become technical training centers. Our conquest fleets now lead infrastructure improvement projects. Even our feared Star Reapers. Commander Apex stepped forward, his once terrifying armor now decorated with safety certification badges. We have found a greater purpose in teaching preventive maintenance and workplace safety. Our kill count has dropped to 0, but our efficiency ratings are through the roof. Pete, finishing with the podium stabilizer, stood up and brushed off his hands. Folks were so busy fighting, they forgot the basic rule of engineering: if you take care of the systems take care of you. Oh, and speaking of taking care, who's ready for the mandatory coffee break? The entire assembly, former warriors, administrators, and conquered species alike, checked their newly synchronized chronometers. It was indeed time for the standardized galaxy-wide coffee break, one of Pete's most popular improvements. But what about the warrior spirit? A former admiral called out. The thrill of conquest? Have you tried optimizing a class for hyperdrive? Pete replied. Now that's a real challenge. Besides, we're exploring 12 galaxies worth of maintenance issues. Trust me, there's plenty of excitement in proper system calibration. Through the council chamber's windows, they could see the transformed capital world. The once threatening imperial architecture now sported cheerful safety signs and efficiency ratings. Maintenance drones worked alongside former soldiers, their shared purpose creating an unprecedented era of cooperation. "The human has destroyed us," a dying hard warrior muttered. "Nope," Pete corrected, pulling out his trusty wrench. "I fixed you." Big difference. An empire built on fear and conquest was always going to break down eventually. But an organization built on proper maintenance and coffee breaks? That'll run forever. He gestured to the massive efficiency charts displayed on the chamber walls. "Your productivity is up 300%. Workplace satisfaction has increased by 500%. Energy efficiency has improved by 700%. And coffee consumption." He grinned. "Well, those numbers are just astronomical." The council chamber filled with appreciative chuckles. Even the most hardened former warriors had to admit, life was better with proper maintenance schedules and regular coffee breaks. "So," Pete concluded, "any other systems need fixing while I'm here?" The assembled delegates looked at each other, then back at the human engineer who had conquered 12 galaxies with nothing but a wrench and common sense. They thought about their optimized ships, their efficient infrastructure, their well-maintained equipment, and their excellent coffee. "No," Maximus spoke for them all, "I believe everything is running quite smoothly now." Pete nodded, satisfied, and began gathering his tools. He had done what Earth sent him to do, not to fight the Empire, but to fix it. As he headed for his ship, after one last coffee break, of course, the sound of his wrench tapping against his toolbox echoed through the corridors. The rhythm was different now. No longer the sound of impending chaos, but the steady beat of well-maintained systems working in perfect harmony. 12 galaxies, once ruled by fear and conquest, now united by proper maintenance procedures, safety protocols, and precisely scheduled coffee breaks. And somewhere back on Earth, the Defense Council received Pete's final report: fixed the Empire. Improved efficiency. Established proper maintenance protocols. Implemented galaxy-wide coffee standards. Returning home for scheduled equipment check and cup of coffee. Pete Thompson, engineer.